You're listening to Big World Network.
Accidental Passion, Episode 4, Lump, read by Meagan Hedin. Warning: although there is no material subject matter within that couldn't be found in any general bookstore with no age constraint, this series is rated 18 and contains adult situations and content. It is intended for mature audiences only and should not be read if you are uncomfortable with graphic sexual intimacy. Wood set his cell phone down in frustration on Deanna's kitchen table. Still no luck? Deanna asked. He had come over to her apartment after she had gotten home from work, and, since arriving, he had tried multiple times to get a hold of Ryan. Nope. I've tried both his and Kim's phones, and I even tried the number for his satellite phone on board his jet. Wood stood up and started pacing. The Detroit detective is going to notify the local police in Belize, but there's no guarantee they will even follow up. I need to be able to warn him. Deanna stood up, still wearing her uniform from working the airline gate all day. She spun him around, facing away from her, and massaged his shoulders. It's not your fault, you know. It was more of a statement than a question. I know, but I feel a little responsible that somehow Rick found out they were in Belize. He turned to face her and she placed her hands on his chest. They'll be okay. They both knew her words were empty. Woods' cell phone vibrated on the table. Almost leaping for it, he grabbed it and pushed the button on the screen to answer. Hello? Woods, it's Detective Reynolds. Oh. Woods visibly looked defeated. I'm sorry, I was just hoping it was Ryan. Any luck on your end? That's why I'm calling. I was able to get a hold of the local police on the island and let them know. It does appear Rick took a flight to the island after arriving in Belize. He's not dumb, Woods stated. Scary and smart. That's never a good combination. Anyway, I let them know the situation and told them there was a restraining order on Rick. Are they going to do anything? Woods looked at Deanna while talking. She watched him intently and mouthed a, what? He nodded his head negatively, letting her know they hadn't gotten in touch with Ryan or Kim yet. Well, that's the thing. They sounded reluctant to get involved, and didn't feel their authority extended to enforcing a restraining order of another country. I think, although I'm not sure, that I finally convinced them to at least let Mr. McCoy and Mrs. Collins know Rick Brewer is on the island for their safety. Detective Reynolds held a tone of frustration. You would be surprised how hard it is to get cooperation on investigations and locating suspects out of the country. Well, thanks for the call. Keep me posted. I have had no luck getting a hold of either one yet. Woods paused. I am debating whether or not to catch a flight down there. Deanna looked up at him in surprise. I wouldn't advise that. Detective Reynolds sounded almost adamant on the other end. You think you have jurisdiction issues in Detroit coming from L.A. There's going to be no tolerance for any action you take in Belize. Besides, I hate to say it, but by the time you get there, he will have probably made his move already. We don't know that. I can't just stay here and wait to see what happens. Detective Reynolds audibly sighed on the other end. If you go, please be careful. Let me know if you need anything, but there isn't much I can do if you get into any issues with the local authorities. And you sure as hell can't take a weapon. Thanks. I appreciate all your help. I'll keep you informed and call me right away if you hear anything from the authorities there. Woods disconnected the call and laid his phone back down on the table. You can't seriously be considering going, Deanna asked incredulously. Woods looked over at her. Ryan has done so much for me. I can't just stand by and let harm come to him. I would never be able to forgive myself if anything happened. Alicia climbed into bed, wearing only a long nightshirt, and slid over next to Mary after turning the light off on her end table. Mary was also only wearing a soft cotton nightshirt, and, as Alicia snuggled up, spooning her, she wrapped one arm over, allowing her hand to rest on Mary's chest while feeling an erect nipple through the fabric. Lifting her other leg, Alicia slid it between Mary's, flesh against flesh on their lower bodies. Despite living together with Mary and becoming more comfortable with her sexuality, Alicia still felt an electricity of excitement and sexual desire at the thought of contact with another woman, especially this woman. It was more than just an attraction, but a feeling of life and connectedness. She had often thought about the sadness of those who lived in denial of their true feelings, trying hard to suppress them, and missing out on the physical and emotional connection that would bring them joy. But then she had also lived in denial of her feelings and desire for women, moving from one empty relationship with a man to another, until finally ending up at rock bottom, finding herself in a relationship of sorts with Kevin Collins, which led to the only relief in her life coming from breathing nitrous oxide at the dental office. But then, because of her accident, Mary had come into her life. It was as if a cloud had been lifted, allowing the sunlight to finally break through. Alicia rolled her eyes at the lameness of her own metaphor running through her thoughts as she held Mary. My brain needs a better copywriter, she thought to herself with amusement. But she knew she owed Mary so much for the happiness she was feeling now, for her patience in allowing Alicia to adjust to realizing her newfound sexuality, working through issues, at times, of self-doubt and denial. Mary had always been patient with her. Pushing her body even tighter against Mary's as she lay on her side, Alicia ran her hand from Mary's chest up to her hair. She tugged on the long strands just enough to expose and kiss the back of Mary's neck, causing a slow moan to emanate from Mary and a slight wiggle of her hips. Their bodies were now so tightly pressed against each other that their naked lower bodies were one, with entwined legs and Mary's thigh pushed tight between Alicia's legs, causing pleasure to radiate through Alicia's body at the slightest movement from either of them. She knew that Mary would be able to feel her warmth and wetness against her hip by now, which was confirmed by Mary beginning to thrust rhythmically. Now it was Alicia who let out a slow moan. She slid her hand down from Mary's hair over her shoulder, down her side over the t-shirt until reaching the end of the fabric around Mary's upper hips, just above where they were now subtly grinding, before sliding her hand around to the front of Mary, searching between her legs. Her fingers found what they were searching for, and Mary ever so slightly adjusted her legs, giving Alicia better access. Alicia could feel that Mary was completely shaved, leaving her smooth and exposed to her fingertips, as she teasingly circled around her opening before finally relenting and allowing one finger to slide between Mary's lips. Slightly spreading her with just the tip of her finger penetrating, Alicia moved to touch Mary's clit with her now wet fingertip. There was no doubt from the movement of Mary's body the kind of pleasure her finger had just caused. Encouraged, Alicia circled her fingertip back around and up again, this time lightly circling Mary's clit before sliding it inside of her, then back out again, wet, to continue pleasuring her most sensitive spot. She began to use several of her fingers, pressing and rubbing. Their hips continued their movements, causing Alicia to push even harder against Mary's flesh to bring out more and more stimulation. Their breathing increased together, each caught up in their own pleasure, with a shared intimacy, drawing closer to their peaks, until the pace reached a fevered rocking of their bodies. After climaxing almost simultaneously, the scent of their lovemaking hanging in the air, and the sheet and blanket over them gently rising and falling, they worked to regain control over their breathing. Alicia rested her hand on Mary's lower belly, sliding it under the t-shirt, and kissed the back of her neck again. Only this time Mary's hair was slightly matted from the sweat and exertion of their bodies' shared passion. "That was completely unexpected," Mary said, breaking the silence. "I was feeling close to you," Alicia answered, sliding her hand gently up Mary's belly to the underside of her left breast. "I like when you're feeling close to me," Mary laughed. But Alicia didn't respond. Her hand had made it to the side of Mary's left breast, and, as her fingertips moved, she felt a small bump. Hesitating, she ran her fingers over it again, more firmly this time. The change in touch and purpose didn't go unnoticed by Mary, and Alicia could feel her companion tense up as she gently continued to palpate, trying to gauge the size of the lump. "What is it?" Mary asked. Alicia hesitated, not wanting to answer. There was no doubt in her mind, however. She had discovered a small but hardened lump on Mary's left breast.
This has been a presentation of Big World Network. Visit us on bigworldnetwork.com for more free weekly series, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to Big World Network.